Emilien has a lot of things to share. He's a cybersecurity expert for the past 15 years, and currently he works at CERT-EU since 2014, and moving from, well, incident response role to, as I mentioned, DevSecOps. The talk will be around sharing is caring. It's nice. And well, of course, as he mentioned, it's catchy and mostly through in line of the business. But today we are running a threat intelligence program, using it to fuel your work on SOC, incident response team, and threat hunters. Now in this talk, I'll just summarize things, so he has more time to talk.
Yeah.
We will present importance of a structured threat intelligence database and how to leverage it to prioritize threat hunting and incident response activity. So, without further ado, Emilien and CTI-Powered hunting and response.
Yes. Thanks for the introduction. So yes, I will speak a bit about cyber threat intelligence, a bit of scripting, automation, and why we need a structured data for threat intelligence, how useful it is, and actually, if you don't have that, it's kind of a shame. As he explained, I have experience in incident response, but I also have experience in threat intelligence itself. I was an analyst in threat intelligence for some time, and before that, I was an offensive security guy, so kind of broad experience. So yeah, I will start with a quick introduction about what we are trying to solve, okay? So basically, let's say for your organization, you start a threat intelligence program, and that's great. So you start actually building your CTI database when you want to store a lot of technical information, technical indicators, specific rules, specific TTPs used by threat actor and everything. So okay, then you say, I need to actually feed this database with content. So you start going, with free sources, Abuse.ch, you have Alien Vault. Of course, you will start setting up MISP, connecting to MISP, and piping everything into your threat database. You may actually spend a bit of money and buy paid feeds from security vendors. Okay, that's great. You put everything into your CTI database, and you say, okay, let's use it now. So you start taking everything which is tagged as malicious, and you ship it everywhere in your SIM, for alert monitoring, in your IDR, in your EDR, in your IPS, your IDS, your antivirus signatures. You do regular scan for threat hunting and everything, and that's great. You get hundreds, thousands, millions of alerts a day. Whoa, amazing. But, okay, what does it mean actually for real people looking at alerts? Okay. Yes, noise, a lot of noise. So mainly, we identified in CERT-EU 3 main issues we have with this approach of consuming everything you can consume. The first one is, of course, lack of context. So you have a nice analyst, okay, level 1, even you scale it to level 2, and then you say, okay, I have this malicious domain or this malicious URL or email address. What is it? What should I look for? Is it a specific malware? Is it a specific threat actor? Which layer of the attack it is? It is like reconnaissance, it is command and control. I don't know. So then your analyst will spend hours, and then at the end you say, okay, it's actually not applicable to your network, so I can ignore it. He lost 2 hours, and okay. Then comes the next step, alert fatigue. He sees this type of stuff, dozens of times a day, hundreds of times a day, and then at the end he just click, yeah, false positive, false positive, false positive, because he just wants to get done with it. Or he could go burnout because he wants to look at everything, okay, and you want to avoid that. And finally, false positive, because when you consume your data and you do not necessarily have context, it's difficult to evaluate the quality of the data you are ingesting. So that's why we try to solve. That's why I will speak now about contextual threat intelligence, okay? It's May CTI as well, so that's great. So what do I mean by contextual threat intelligence? So of course you have your technical indicators I explained already. You have IP addresses, domains, file name hashes. You can have rules, Sigma rules, Sierra rules, Snort or Suricata, which can be used by different tools. But you may have other stuff like name pipe, registry keys, all type of stuff which could be useful for incident response or threat hunting, for example. If you want to have more of those type of objects, just go to the MISP documentation about objects. They have something like 300 type of objects or something. So you can actually ingest a lot of type of data. Okay? But what do we need in terms of to do something meaningful is actual link to other type of threat objects. Okay? So that's basically what you can have described in sticks. So it can be malware family, threat actors or intrusion set, depending on which terminology you use, targeted sectors, specific victims sometimes. I will explain later what is important. Specific incidents, so it can be public incidents or it can be incidents inside of your organization. And TTPs, so tactic, technique, and procedure, as is described in the attack framework, for example. And then, even better, when we speak about context, it's good if you can actually link those objects between themselves. So, for example, you can link a specific threat actor to a list of tools he's using, to a list of TTP he's using. You can link a threat actor with a targeted sector. So if you identified a malware family or threat actor which is targeting, I don't know, the banking sector, and your organization is in the banking sector, it's of interest for you because you may actually want to know more about which type of stuff is used by this threat actor. And finally, which type of TTPs is used by a specific malware. Is it a malware family used for reconnaissance, used for lateral movement, command and control? There are very interesting discussions before about this kind of kits, second stage kits that can be used to do lateral movement or to do this kind of impersonation, and you want to have this information. So there is an example of something useful I find as a threat hunter or an incident responder. So there I have this nice example about a recent document about Churla activities, and then you have this nice domain, anamorph with a 0.su, which was used. And actually, in this case, you can see that it can be linked to different type of objects. So of course, if you have a hit on this domain, it may indicate that you're targeted or monitored by the Churla group. Okay? It means, although we know, based on the documentation we had from the threat report, that it was targeting Ukraine. Okay? This specific domain was used to target victims in Ukraine. Something useful as well is on the blue, on the left and the right, you have two malware family, Andromeda, okay, and Corpiculoac. And what happened in this case is that this domain was used by Andromeda, to actually monitor the victim, the potential victim, and once the victim was identified as being interesting, the same domain was used to deliver another malware family. So you see that you may have different type of link between your objects. And finally, we can link it to specific use. So it's techniques described by the attack framework. So web protocol, gather victim of org information. This graph is not perfect. It's just a small example to explain a bit what I mean when I say I need context about specific technical information. Okay, and finally, something which is important for us is we need to think in a graph model. Okay. So there is this very simple example. I have the group, so the threat actor group, which is linked to the Andromeda framework, okay, a malware family. Even you can add a tag because it was used with a specific versioning. And then those links to 3 domains, okay? So you may not have in your threat intelligence database the direct link between the group and the domain. You may have to navigate through the graph to actually being able to get your list of interesting domains. So if for some reason, a SOC analyst or incident responder or threat hunter asks me, okay, give me all of the domains related to Churla, okay, you may not necessarily think about which exact malware family we're speaking about. So by having this kind of graph approach, you're able to navigate through it and give him a good list. Okay. So quickly, I will not go too far in that, but there is existing format for contextualized CTI. Do not reinvent the wheel. Some of them are great. I will mostly speak about the first two, so Sticks version 2, which is great because there is really this graph approach into the relationship between the different threat objects. And finally, one which is very used by a lot of people in our community, which is MISP, and then especially MISP galaxies. So basically, you can tag your event or your specific technical indicators into put some kind of lot of tags in it. And so you can use that to actually properly tag your information in your threat intelligence database. Okay, so now that we have the idea about having what I mean by contextualize, the next step is to actually maintaining what we can call our threats landscape. So what does it mean? It means that are you able as an organization to answer to some of those questions? Which threat actor are most likely to target your organization? So when I was speaking about banking sector, if you know that a specific threat actor is targeting a lot of banking institutions and you're working in the banking sector, you may want to get interested into this threat actor as they actually previously targeted you. So you have to look back into the previous incident you had to handle and keep this information. Keep it for forever, because if they targeted you once, they will do it again. What type of techniques are they using? Are they using some specific malware and tools? And which part of your technology stack is actually vulnerable to the type of techniques they are using? So if you know that a specific group is, I don't know, targeting Exchange, and you're not using Exchange, it may actually limit the scope of what you want to look for. Because why would you consume indicators of compromise which are dedicated to attacking Exchange if you don't have this technology? So maintaining your threat landscape is to have a visibility about how exposed you are and who is targeting you. Okay? And if you have access to this information, I'm not saying it's easy, then you should actually properly tag your database. So tag your threat actor as important. Tag your malware family as important. Tag the TTP as important for you because you cannot look for everything, as I explained. Alert fatigue, nervous breakdown, everything. Okay, so that's an example. Like I want to answer through 3 questions when I'm thinking about my threat landscape. First one is, which threat actor targeted your organization in the last 5 years? Those examples there are not real life. Huh? It's existing power group, but do not take it as a existing activity. So there I have 3 trial question or reg, for example, and then based on this list of threat actors I'm interested in, then I will ask the next question. Can you list me all of the tools they are using? So then you have a list of tools, malware families, they are used. It's open source information. It was documented, so then you have that in your threat intelligence database. And finally, you answer the useful question for your, I would say, your SOC, for example. What are all of the active command and control domains used by those threat actors which may be targeting me? And then, as you can see, I describe links directly from the malware family to some domains, but you may actually have direct links between threat actor and domain, because in some cases, you know that the threat actor used the domain, but you do not necessarily which tool was used, okay? So that's why you have to have this graph approach and being able to query your data from an entry point and navigate it through it to get the actual useful, actionable information at the end, okay? Okay, so if you want to look a bit at what we do at CERT-EU as a threat landscape, a bit of publicity here, you can go to our website. We have a nice threat landscape report about the last 10 years. So it's some kind of major threat that we were interested in. And we also produced recently for Q1 2023 an executive summary about the threat landscape for European institutions, bodies, and agencies. Okay, so it means what are the type of stuff used against European institutions, bodies, and agencies, interesting groups. Okay, it's a TLP clear information, so do not expect to have something too crunchy. And finally, something important, so we have a dedicated cyber threat intelligence team at CERT-EU, of course, and their job, part of their job is to actually maintain our database to keep track about the most relevant threat actor, families, and TTPs for our monitoring threat hunting activities for all constituents, okay? So there are some type of, I would say, threat activities that we may not be interested in. So their job is to actually give the capability for the other team to focus on what's important for us. There we go. Okay, so now I will explain a bit one implementation that we do and which use those concepts as described. Okay. So I will release the tool before the end of the week. I was actually debugging last night and I found out some small issues. So yeah, I will fix it before the end of the week. And I will publish it and I will update the slides in the first, but it will be on our GitHub. So it's a tool that I call Yara Collector, and it's available as a standalone application or Python library, so it can be used by other applications. To date, mostly work with OpenCTI and MISP, which are two open source platform to manage threat intelligence data. Okay, and what it's doing mostly is to be able to collect Yara rules based on specific filters. So navigating the graph of information to extract the relevant Yara rules for a specific threat. Okay, so you have different type of stuff. So the first one is a collection. So then I can use some filter like specific intrusion set, let's say, I don't know, APT28, or which creator. So because we consume data for different feeds, we want to tag who actually share it with us. We also put tag on the intrusion set. So as I explained, when you maintain your threat landscape, we have something we name top threat actor, which is a threat actor we are mostly interested in because they are targeting our constituents. So then I can just use this tool to say, okay, give me all of the data related to the top threat actor, so then I can do my threat hunting campaign. Okay? We can put directly tag to some rules, for example, important. So let's say you had an incident in one of your constituents or in your organization, and you want to be sure that every time you do a threat hunting campaign, you use a specific Yara rules to see if those stuff that you found and which is specific to you and your environment will be used all of the time for threat hunting. And finally, some like sins, so meaning if I only want fresh data, if I want all of the stuff I have in my database since the beginning of time, that's something doable. Then we developed some tools to actually go through those collected Yara rules, okay, and clean them. Because, okay, you have automated consumption of feeds, and actually you may actually ingest rules which are not working because they are broken, because they are calling in port that you are not using. So this tool is basically to deduplicate and remove the stuff which are not working, and I will even immediately tag back the rule to say it's not working, so my cyber threat intelligence team can actually look into it. We group everything, and finally the last one that I will show with some screenshots is a bundle. So it's some kind of CLI to create your bundle of Yara rules, so then you can use it in your threat hunting campaign. So I just described actually the stuff in the previous slide, so I will move forward. Okay, so I initially planned a live demo, but I have some issue with the Wi-Fi, so screenshots will do. So that's how it works. So basically, that's an example with OpenCTI. So I start putting my information, URL and API key, and then I have a way to select some specific filters. So in this example, I will actually select tag intrusion set plus a sins because I only want fresh Yara rules that were ingested into my threat intelligence database. Okay, so then on the top left, I selected those two filters, and finally, I say, okay, so I want the tag top threat actor, okay, since the last 30 days. So it will only take the rules which were created in the last months with the which are linked to the threat actors that we specifically tagged, okay. So then I save everything. So the CLI will give you the possibility to do several collections. So for example, I want everything which is top threat actor and then everything which is top malware. So I just run twice. I mean, the process of exporting the data, and then at the end, I will just group everything and have one nice Yara bundle. And it will actually be saved in a specific stuff. So that's the output. So, okay, you cannot read, I will zoom in one of them. But in this case, you will see that I have rules, for example, for it's a demo for APT28 and for Turla, for example. So all of the rules there are TLP clear, of course. So they are coming from Sequoia, from the dataset I used. And then at the end, I have a nice Yara file with all of the rules I want to use for my threat hunting campaign. Okay, you have a link to the rules if you want to know more. But that's the way it is. I'm a fast speaker, so I may be actually be early. Yeah. Okay. So now the next step, once we have those Yara rules, is we will actually build packages, so threat hunting packages. So we do that with some pipelines in Git. That's pretty straightforward. So we have a threat intelligence database, and then I have my Yara collector tool, and then the Yara collector tool is actually taking, by default, 3 types of rules. First one, all of the rules which are related to a threat actor, which was tagged top threat actor, and the rule is not broken or is not having too many false positives. Because, of course, if during a threat hunting campaign I have one of those rules which triggers 6,000 alerts, I want to tag it to avoid it being used next time. Then I will actually take all of the rules which are linked to malware families that were tagged by your cyber threat intelligence team as top malware and not tagged as broken or false positive. And finally, all of the rules which are related to recent incidents for all constituents. So even if it's not, because we may have some incidents when you will never know who's behind, but because it targeted you, you want to be sure that it's not coming back because threat actors have tendencies to reuse the same tools because it works, so why not? And again, not broken and not false positive. And then once we collected all of those Yara rules, we have the next step of the pipeline, which is to actually create a bundle. So you have a lot of different tools you can use. I will not discuss them further, but to do actually a Yara scans, and then you will deploy it in every of your server and your workstation, and to get a report back, and then you can do your threat hunting campaign. So that's more or less basic pipeline how it works. So there I spoke about Yara rules, but actually the process and the way we process the data is actually the same approach for IOC-based log monitoring. So we are doing monitoring for some of our constituents. So we are looking at data from DNS, proxy, endpoint monitoring, and also so everything which is IOC-based, we actually do exactly the same approach. So our cyber threat intelligence team identifies a relevant object, so maintaining the threat landscape, and then we will prioritize the observable, the indicator of compromised, based on a matching system. So the way it works, more or less, is that I have 10 different rules, and every time it matches with a rule, I will give points to an observable, and then I can actually order it by the most relevant observable to the less relevant, and then I say, okay, I will take the first 10,000, and then ship it into my threat intelligence database in the cloud, I mean, like in Sentinel or in Defender or in Azure WatchGuard, AWS WatchGuard, or I can push it into lookup table in a SIEM, okay, and use that to do my IOC-based monitoring on a regular basis. So we try to have the same approach because the amount of malicious, observable malicious IOCs we were getting every day was just not manageable for our SOC. So that's something we actually put in place. And so far, I hope, okay, some of my colleagues are there, they may not be agree with us, we reduce the number of false positives and use less alerts that the SOC was managing. And finally, I'm already at my conclusion. I think I spoke very fast. Yeah, sorry. I still have 15 minutes. Okay, I will take questions. Yeah, sorry. Okay, so one important. Do not kill your SOC staff. I mean, they are humans as well, and alert fatigue is real. I've been there. I actually, part of my job when I was in incident response was to do log monitoring, and yes, after days watching endless alerts that are not really relevant or that very, I mean, low-hanging fruits that you don't really want to spend your time on, it's exhausting. So be careful if you ever set up these kind of activities. I mean, be nice with your SOC staff. That's important. And finally, that's a message for the feed vendors. Please, please stop selling just malicious IOCs. Like, yes, I have this nice list of 10,000 new malicious domain. What is it? It's malicious. Okay, your problem now. Because it's not actionable for us. I mean, I would prefer to have at least a little bit of context. Is it a command and control? Is it, I mean, used for deployment? It is used for reconnaissance? What it is? Because saying to me it's malicious, I may need an analyst to look for logs for 2 hours to figure out what it is. And yeah, so, yeah. And those feeds sometimes are not cheap, so yeah. Sometimes, yeah. And finally, yeah, so that's the most difficult part. So maintaining a threat landscape is difficult because it's required automation, it requires, I mean, smart people, it's required to have historical data about all the threats you may have faced. But yes, maintaining a proper threat landscape and be aware about what you expose, who is targeting you, which kind of techniques they can use against you, will actually help you a lot to spend your effort and your time into something relevant for your organization instead of blindly trying to find something, I mean, the needle on the haystack. And yes. Sorry if I spoke too fast. I'm open for questions now.
Thanks so much. Please make me to walk so I can pass around the mic. Where's the first question? Anyone? Yeah. There we go.
Thank you very much for this session. So in the SOCs, we're starting to see the strategic aspect of the threat intelligence besides the tactical aspect. And I was wondering, what do you recommend? What do you suggest to those TI people who needs to contextualize the TI, but to the CXO level, to the governance, the security governance side, so the business is more informed about the threats?
Yeah, that's true that there I mostly speak about, I would say, tactical and operational threat intelligence, because that's more my background. Okay, so what we have is in CERT-EU, part of the job of our cyber threat intelligence team is to do actual, I would say, threat landscape report or ad hoc threat landscape report about specific groups or specific ongoing situation for management. So we have, so our CTI team not only manage technical aspect of cyber threat intelligence, but as well as the communication aspect to our stakeholders, which will be mostly high-level management of European institutions, bodies, and agencies. So then they actually produce every week some kind of summary about the actual situation in terms of threat landscape and what are the important facts they should be, bullet points. So one example is I have to meet some colleagues from another CERT during first. So I just ask them for, okay, highlight me in 10 lines what are the relevant threats in specific countries that I will see people from are facing. So then I'm more aware of it, and then it will speed up the negotiation and the discussion. And that's the type of service they provide. So there is a bit of, yeah. And I hope ChatGPT will not replace those guys.
Questions? Next.
Yeah, so in my experience, a lot of teams start out with a plan to want to go to where you are with threat intelligence-driven IOC-based detection. And you kind of, most people start out with, okay, I'm going to collect my IOCs. And you deploy the MISP, and you fill it up with IOCs, and now you have 10,000 IOCs, and you don't know what to do with it, and you'll have to backtrack, right? My question is, in your experience, what is a good way to start out? Where, like, if you're going to do like step 1, step 3, step 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. Okay, the first thing will be to assess actual which visibility you can have. Okay, yep. So to actually assess data you have access to or resources you have access. Okay, if you have the capability to, I mean, if you're just seeing DNS logs, yeah. Okay, then you should start by maybe logging more. If you have capability to deploy a scanner and then ship back the results somewhere, then you have a bit more visibility. And then identify which are the relevant sources for your organization. So I would say starting by identifying sources which provide you threat relevant to your sector. If you're governmental, if you're banking, if you're retail, what are you protecting against? Okay, I mean, if you're an hospital, you may want to look into ransomware threat actor, huh? Because obviously there are some cases. So I think I would, yes, to take this both approach. Okay, what is your actual visibility? So then you know better what type of data you need. Okay, do I need to pay thousands of euros for YARA rules if I do not have the capability to execute them, and just hoping that someday I will have a case and then I can, you know, take an images and do forensics on it, and then I have all of the YARA rules that I'm collecting since 2 years. Maybe that's not the best approach. And at the same time, being aware that the amount of data you may be collecting may not be that useful. So again, trying to identify sources which provide you contextual information, so then you know that you can filter out the useful stuff.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that answers my questions.
And then,
thank you.
And then magic, you know.
More questions? We still have time.
Okay.
For more questions, if you want to take 1 or 2. No? Well, let's just put our, oh, sorry.
My question is, you integrated 2 tools, OpenCTI and MISP. Is the reason why to have 2 based on what kind of data sits there, or is just, what's the point to have 2?
So today, not giving too much details, but basically we use both platforms for different reasons. for really cyber threat intelligence data and for our CTI analysts. They will work a lot with OpenCTI, but the thing is that we use MISP for sharing with some of our constituents as well. So, I mean, we are using both of those tools. I initially developed the tool for OpenCTI because that's where there is the most relevant data in the way we are organized, okay? But I say, okay, I will open source it. What are people using, okay? I'm pretty sure people, when they start building a SOC, there is high chances that they will deploy MISP first, and then when they are more mature, a more CTI-oriented tools. So that's why I actually developed compatibility with MISP to be sure that it will be, I hope, useful for some people, instead of limiting them to a very specific CTI approach platform. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And do we have more questions? All right, thanks so much. Let's just put our hand together for Emilien.
Thank you.